Aim assist is the most spoken about topic in Call of Duty Warzone right now. A number of high-ranking pros, mixed input players, and lots of content creators have shown clips and voiced their distaste for how aim assist is implemented in Call of Duty. And I will be honest, some of the clips are pretty bad. You can see lots of aim assist doing lots of work for a lot of the people in those clips. And it's fairly well known at this point that Call of Duty has some of the most overpowered aim assist in the industry and is the most controller-friendly game in the cross-platform era that we have seen in quite some time. This debate has kind of raged on to a point where I'm seeing some pretty extreme takes about disabling crossplay, having input-only based matchmaking, and even people going as far to claim that aim assist is effectively a legal aimbot in most shooters these days. And whilst I'm sure a lot of this is engagement farming and people trying to get lots of likes on their tweets or just generally be controversial for the sake of controversy, there is a very serious debate to be had about aim assist in modern shooters. Because for the first time in pretty much ever, we have consoles and PCs interacting with each other with different input methods. Consoles can use keyboard and mouse these days. PC players are using controllers more than ever in Call of Duty. And balancing out different input devices in a single game is actually a challenging task that lots of games are facing. But I've got to say, from a personal level, and the reason I made this video today is I'm extremely tired of seeing these tired and terrible takes on the internet from players who are either exclusively keyboard and mouse and think that controllers are basically cheating, or people who are exclusively controller and don't understand the intricacies of the keyboard and mouse problem and what's actually occurring. I am a mixed input player. I can play Call of Duty on controller or keyboard and mouse to an extremely high level, and I can do the same with Battlefield. And I play Call of Duty exclusively on controller, and pretty much most other FPS games on keyboard and mouse. And when you've got these debates raging on about aim assist being OP, or keyboard and mouse versus controller, or PC versus console, and all of the different things that ultimately affect balance, really, without sounding like having an inflated ego, it is people like me who have the most insight into these issues, because we use both, and we can be objective about both. So let's talk about this today, as a mixed input player who fully understands this issue, as somebody who literally talks about controllers, their intricacies, their settings, their dead zones to a professional level, and somebody who plays on a keyboard and mouse religiously. What is actually going on with Call of Duty, and are any of these horrific internet takes actually worth listening to? Now, before I dive into the intricacies of this topic, the first thing I want to say is that the worst take I've seen on the internet is people saying that Call of Duty is a controller-only game, or Apex should be a keyboard and mouse-only game, or this game should be this or that because of wherever it came from or the history of that game. And ultimately, these are terrible takes. We are in a cross-play generation for the first time ever. This has never ever happened before for the most part, and there has never been a scenario before where keyboard and mouse players and controller players are interacting with each other at such a frequently high level. So claiming that Call of Duty should just cater towards controller players is a total load of nonsense, and should never really be listened to as a take on the internet. Crossplay has been an absolute revolution for gaming. Being able to play with anybody on any given platform, on any input device that they want to play on, is an absolute godsend. And it's also worth bearing in mind that this has opened up a lot of options to people who are differently abled. People on console who use accessibility controllers, or people on console who have opted to use a keyboard and mouse for various different health reasons. So saying that something should be a certain way is a very large blanket statement that should just be completely ignored. So to start with, is aim assist OP in Call of Duty? Yes, massively so. As a controller player and a keyboard and mouse player, Call of Duty's aim assist, in my view, sets a pretty much industry high of how much a controller's aim assist will help you in a given gunfight. And you can tell just how much of a difference it makes when you play games that have less aim assist. The biggest, most recent example I can think of is X-Defiant, which, although it still has aim assist, clearly has substantially less compared to its Call of Duty counterpart. And the specific nature of Call of Duty's problem is what's called rotational aim assist, where if a character strafes across your screen and you're moving your stick left or right, whether that's the aiming stick or the movement stick, the game pretty much does a certain degree of tracking for you. You don't actually have to follow that target. Now, before this comment appears in the comment section, I'm going to say it here and now, aim assist is universal. It does not matter if you're on PC or console. It doesn't matter what input device controller you're using, whether it's Xbox or PlayStation. And the number of people I see who say, well, my aim assist doesn't do that. That's just not true. It's universally known, factually proven, tested 1,000 times over. Aim assist is the same on PC and console. It does identical things, and the only thing that makes it visibly look different is if you have a higher or lower FOV, where a higher FOV shows the impact of aim assist more, and a lower FOV doesn't. And as somebody who plays with both inputs on controller and keyboard and mouse, the issue of rotational aim assist is the fact that it does most of the work for most players most of the time. Whether you're trying to break somebody's camera by slide canceling past them or jump shotting around a corner, the only way that rotational aim assist stops working in this game is if you drop shot an opponent, and that has been tested and proven. Only the prone animation in Call of Duty and the act of drop shotting stops aim assist tracking you rotationally. But the problem with drop shotting is that 9 times out of 10, you end up drop shotting into a headshot that somebody otherwise wouldn't have gotten because they were aiming low, and you end up getting killed anyway. And as somebody who uses all of these inputs and understands the intricacies and problems of all of them, I'd say Call of Duty needs to nerf aim assist, specifically rotational aim assist, by about 50%. I'd say aim assist on the whole needs a nerf by about 20 to 30%, but rotational aim assist in particular needs to be pretty much halved in value. It does way too much tracking for people, and whilst I don't agree that it's some sort of legal aimbot, the reality is that it makes a lot of players who otherwise wouldn't kill you in a certain gunfight end up killing you. And that's the reality that a lot of PC players face at close range engagements, or anybody who uses keyboard and mouse across any device for that matter. Close range engagements, if you use a keyboard and mouse, are pretty much a nightmare because a controller is always going to have some degree worth of tracking. And arguably what's even worse than that as well is that because of aim assist, certain visual recoil effects are actually reduced on controllers because the tracking is maintained by the rotational aim assist, whereas on keyboard and mouse you get none of that support. So if a gun is visually kicking up in front of you, on keyboard and mouse, if you can't see the enemy, good luck, you're pretty much as good as gone. And the solution to this problem to me is literally just reducing the amount of aim assist by about 30 to 50%. And it would make a huge benefit for everybody in the game. Not only would it be more balanced for keyboard and mouse players, but something I don't see enough people talking about is the fact that it would increase the skill gap for controller players. I have so many gunfights as a controller player in Warzone where it's clear that somebody's aim assist has helped them get a certain number of chest shots or stomach shots that they otherwise wouldn't have achieved because they weren't tracking me properly. You can visibly see their reticle being dragged by aim assist as I move too quickly past them. So nerfing aim assist would ultimately create a more balanced environment for keyboard and mouse and controller, and also mean that controller gunfights are a little bit more interesting and allow more skillful players who get more headshots and more chest shots or break people's cameras more effectively to have a better experience because they've done something relatively skillful. And I think the biggest problem with aim assist that most people don't talk about is that it will always be exploited by players to a maximum extent. Players who know how to utilize aim assist by strafing left and right whilst they're shooting, which you'll see as a common feature of most controller players, including myself, or just having really low dead zones so that the aim assist is ultimately more sensitive, are just things that are going to occur, because if that mechanic exists in the game, people are going to use that mechanic. Now, I know a lot of people will point to videos from people like Jowo who played without aim assist and dropped 40 kills, but that's not really the same. Jowo is a top 0.01% player, and the reality is that aim assist is a problem that has to be addressed whilst thinking about the entire player base. As much as I think personally 50% would be a good number to go with in terms of reducing aim assist, the reality is that 30% would probably be the value that would satisfy most boxes in terms of making sure that players who aren't necessarily as time invested into the game, don't play as much as the pros, or only play here and there, aren't completely left in the dust as the game modernizes. I ultimately think keyboard and mouse as an input is kind of dying in first-person shooters in a way that doesn't really feel fair in the crossplay generation. Crossplay is about being able to play on any console or PC with any device you want, keyboard, controller, whatever it so happens to be, and still having a decent experience. And condemning one side or another side to basically problems is not really the solution. I often see people reply to this by saying, well, look at all of the other advantages that PC has. You know, they have the ability to do sound EQ, they have really high frame rates, really strong PCs, they can change all their graphics settings. And whilst that is the case to some extent, I think it's worth remembering that most gaming PCs these days are weaker than consoles. If you look at the Steam hardware survey, the number of people who are doing more than 120 FPS at 1440p and above in Warzone is probably less than 1% of people who play on PC. The majority of people's PCs are fairly low-end spec or medium-range spec, and not everybody's a streamer who spends thousands of pounds and dollars on perfecting their setup. Now, I'm not going to lie, I have a 240 FPS 1440p PC. It's literally the best system money can buy right now, and I know that that does give me competitive advantages. But I'm literally 0.0001% of the number of people you'd run into in Warzone. And at the end of the day, so long as there's a balanced input device, whether you're on 240 FPS or 120 FPS on console, so long as the actual game itself is balanced, anybody can beat anybody. I'm curious to see you guys' thoughts and feelings in the comment section below. As a mixed input player and somebody who enjoys playing controller on Warzone, I actually do want to see a more balanced environment, not only for keyboard and mouse players, but also for controller players too, because I don't think that's something people think about enough. But I've seen people say, to some extent on the internet, that they would actually welcome seeing the end of PC crossplay. So Xbox and PlayStation crossplay together, not with anybody else. And I've seen this as a fairly popular opinion, not only because of the issues of mixed input devices, but also because of the matters of cheating. And to some extent, I do understand that. I get what they mean, I understand where they're coming from, and the cheating generation has become a hell of a problem. And we are inherently reliant on anti-cheats to solve those issues. But what are your thoughts and feelings on aim assist? Is it something you feel is a problem? Do you recognize it as an issue? Or is it something that you haven't even really thought about? I'd be interested to see your thoughts and feelings on this, so let me know in the comment section down below. Drop a like, drop a subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.